911, what's your emergency?
Hello, oh God, please help me. I'm driving on Highway 101, and there's a truck following me. He's been tailgating me for miles, and I think I saw a gun. Oh God, I'm really scared. He's trying to intimidate me, and I don't know what to do.
Okay, stay calm. Can you give me your location and the license plate number of the truck?
I'm near the Oak Street exit, and the license plate number is 7KND123. Please, hurry. He's,
Ma'am, stay on the line. What's happening?
It was the summer of 2008, the year I got my first taste of real independence. I had just turned 23 and finally saved up enough for a used car, a little red Honda Civic that had already seen better days. It wasn't much, but it represented freedom, and I made good use of it, taking road trips every chance I got. This time, I was driving from northern New Jersey to visit my cousin in rural West Virginia. The plan was simple, a weekend of hiking, stargazing, and catching up. I'd loaded up on snacks, burned a few new CDs for the drive, and left early enough to avoid the worst of the traffic. The day started perfectly. The sky was clear, the highways were smooth, and my playlist was hitting just right. I felt untouchable, cruising down I-68 with the windows down, letting the summer breeze whip through the car. A couple of hours in, my gas light pinged on. I wasn't worried. I'd passed several signs for rest stops and knew one was coming up. I took the exit at mile marker 128 and followed the ramp to a small, isolated gas station nestled among the trees. It was one of those older places with faded signage and a single row of pumps. The only other car there was a dusty gray SUV parked near the convenience store. I pulled up to a pump, stepped out, and stretched my legs, relishing the quiet for a moment. That's when I saw him. He was leaning against the wall near the store entrance, sipping from a styrofoam coffee cup. Mid-40s, heavyset, with short-cropped hair and a thick mustache. His eyes caught mine, and even from a distance, they unsettled me. There was something too direct, too calculating about the way he watched me. I tried to ignore him, focusing on the gas pump as I filled up my tank. But when I glanced over again, he was still staring. I brushed it off. Maybe he was just zoning out, or maybe I was being paranoid. As I finished pumping gas and headed toward the store for a bottle of water, he straightened up and moved toward me. "Hey there," he said, his voice friendly but off somehow. "You traveling alone?" I stopped short, immediately on edge. "Just passing through," I said, keeping my tone neutral. "You don't look like you're from around here." He nodded toward my car, his eyes flicking to the New Jersey plates. "Where are you headed?" "Just visiting family," I said quickly, sidestepping him to get inside. He didn't follow me in, but I could feel his eyes on me as I walked away. Inside, the store was dim and empty, except for a cashier flipping through a magazine behind the counter. I grabbed a water and some pretzels, paid quickly, and debated whether to wait a bit before going back outside. After a couple of minutes, I peeked through the window. The man was gone, and so was his coffee cup. Relieved, I headed back to my car, tossing my snacks into the passenger seat and starting the engine. As I pulled out of the lot and approached the on-ramp, I saw it. A dark blue pickup truck idling on the shoulder just past the ramp entrance. My stomach sank. It was him. He was parked at an angle, watching the exit as if waiting for me. I didn't stop. I turned onto the ramp and accelerated, merging onto the highway as quickly as I could. In my rearview mirror, I saw the pickup pull onto the road behind me. My heart started racing. I told myself it was a coincidence. Maybe he was just heading the same way, but when I switched lanes, he did too. Every move I made, he mirrored. I grabbed my phone and called my cousin, my voice shaky as I explained what was happening. "Get off at the next exit," she said, her voice calm but firm. "Don't go straight to my place. If he follows, drive somewhere public, like a diner or a police station." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. Up ahead, I saw a sign for a rest area and decided to test her theory. I signaled and veered onto the exit ramp. The pickup followed. My breath caught in my throat as I pulled into the parking lot of the rest area, which was thankfully crowded with families and truckers taking breaks. I parked near the entrance and stayed in my car, watching as the pickup rolled slowly through the lot. He didn't park. Instead, he circled once, his eyes sweeping over the rows of vehicles, before pulling back onto the highway and disappearing. I stayed at the rest area for nearly an hour, my hands trembling as I replayed the encounter in my mind. When I finally felt safe enough to leave, I drove cautiously, constantly checking my mirrors. I made it to my cousin's house without seeing the truck again, but the fear lingered. That night, we talked about what happened, and she insisted I report it. I called the local police the next morning and gave them a description of the man and his truck, but without a license plate or any concrete evidence, there wasn't much they could do. To this day, I don't know who he was or what he wanted, but I can't help thinking about how deliberate his actions were, how he seemed to wait, to watch, to follow. It's a memory that still sends chills down my spine, a reminder that even on the open road, freedom comes with risks. I'll never forget the cold, dark night I found myself stranded on the side of a highway. It started as a moment of frustration and anger, but spiraled into something I'd never have imagined. I had stormed out of my girlfriend's apartment after an argument. The details of the fight feel trivial now, but back then, it left me too rattled to stay. Without thinking, I grabbed my car keys and left, leaving my phone behind. I only realized this mistake much later. The drive was supposed to calm me down, a silent road to clear my mind. But somewhere between the vast stretches of highway and the gently falling rain, my car betrayed me. It sputtered to a stop, refusing to start no matter how much I twisted the key in desperation. My frustration quickly turned to unease. No cell phone, no passing vehicles except for the occasional truck, and a creeping sense of vulnerability. The highway stretched endlessly in both directions, surrounded by dense, moonlit woods. I debated staying in the car, but quickly dismissed it. I knew there was an exit about a mile or so ahead with a gas station that might still be open. It wasn't a long walk, but it was daunting. The rain had turned to a light snow, and the only sound was the crunch of my boots against the gravel as I walked along the guardrail. The stillness around me felt oppressive, as though the night itself was watching. Every shadow in the woods seemed alive, every creak of the trees a whisper I couldn't quite catch. After about 15 minutes, I reached a hill. In the distance, the faint glow of lights marked the highway exit, my hopeful destination. As I approached, I noticed a figure on the bridge above. At first, I thought I was imagining it. A silhouette, small and lithe, crossed the bridge at a steady jog. It struck me as odd. Who goes jogging in the dead of night, on a deserted road, in freezing temperatures? I watched as the figure disappeared into the shadows, unsettled but determined to keep moving. I dismissed it as a strange coincidence and pressed on, eager to get to the gas station. The real horror began moments later. As I approached the exit, I had to climb over the guardrail to bypass thick bushes. The trail curved downward, leading directly to the gas station. My footsteps quickened as I imagined the warmth of the building and the relief of speaking to another human. Then, without warning, something struck me from behind. I hit the ground hard, my chest and face slamming into the icy pavement. Panic surged through me as I rolled over to face my attacker. It was her, the jogger from the bridge. She stood over me, her eyes wild and feral, saliva dripping from her mouth. Before I could react, she lunged, her nails raking across my face. Pain erupted in my left eye as her fingers jabbed deep, leaving me disoriented and blinded. Adrenaline kicked in. I scrambled to my feet, shoving her off me with all the strength I could muster. She slammed against the guardrail, the metallic clang echoing in the still night. For a moment, I thought it was over. But as I staggered backward, clutching my injured eye, she rose again. Her shrieks filled the air as she bolted up the trail, disappearing toward the bridge. Heart pounding, I didn't stop to think. I turned and ran down the exit, slipping and stumbling in my panic but too terrified to care. The lights of the gas station were a beacon of safety, and I burst through the door, nearly collapsing as I entered. The clerk, wide-eyed and stunned, quickly called for help. My face was a mess. Blood dripped from the scratches, and my left eye was nearly swollen shut. The police arrived within the hour, and though they searched the area thoroughly, they found no trace of the woman. Even now, sitting alone in my apartment, I can't shake the memory. I often wonder who she was and why she attacked me. Was she out there waiting for someone like me, or was I just in the wrong place at the wrong time? One thing is certain. I'll never look at an empty highway the same way again. It was early March in 2018, and the chill in the Montana air was sharp enough to cut through even the thickest jackets. Spring break had finally arrived, and my roommate Sophia had convinced me to let her ride home with me. I was heading to my small hometown, tucked deep in the rural heart of Montana, and she lived in a neighboring town not far off my route. We were both 22, thrilled to escape the monotony of university life for a week of home-cooked meals and restful nights. Packing up my old car, a battered sedan my parents had handed down to me, we loaded snacks, coffee, and a playlist of nostalgic pop hits. It felt like the perfect road trip, even if the destination was far from glamorous. The first couple of hours flew by. The highways were open and empty, bordered by sprawling plains that seemed to stretch forever. We alternated between laughing at old jokes and singing loudly to the music, barely noticing as the sun dipped lower on the horizon. But as we approached the more remote parts of the route, things started to feel different. The first sign was subtle. The sudden appearance of headlights in my rearview mirror. They were faint at first, barely noticeable against the fading light. But within minutes, they were closer. Too close. "Someone's in a hurry," Sophia muttered, glancing behind us. I nodded, gripping the wheel a little tighter. The car, a dark truck, was tailgating us so closely that I could make out the shape of its grille. I was already driving 5 miles over the speed limit, but this guy seemed to think I wasn't going fast enough. "I hate people like this," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Sophia shrugged. "Just let him pass." But he didn't pass. Instead, he stayed glued to our bumper, his headlights glaring in my rearview mirror. The tension in the car grew thicker with every mile. Finally, I spotted a small rest stop up ahead, a diner with a gravel parking lot. Relieved, I pulled in and parked near the entrance, letting the truck zoom past us. Its engine roared as it sped down the highway, disappearing into the distance. Sophia sighed dramatically. "Thank God. That guy was stressing me out." "Same," I agreed, though the unease in my chest hadn't quite subsided. We decided to stretch our legs and grab some coffee. The diner was nearly empty, save for a middle-aged waitress and an older couple sharing a plate of fries. It was a quiet, unassuming place, and for a few minutes I started to relax. But as we headed back to the car, I noticed something that sent a shiver down my spine. The truck was parked at the far edge of the lot, its headlights off but its silhouette unmistakable. "Sophia," I said quietly, nodding toward the truck. She froze. "Is that?" I nodded. Neither of us moved for a moment, our eyes locked on the dark shape of the vehicle. "Maybe he just stopped for coffee," Sophia whispered, though her voice lacked conviction. "Maybe," I echoed. But I didn't believe it. Without saying another word, we climbed into the car and locked the doors. My hands were trembling as I started the engine, and Sophia was scanning the lot nervously. As we pulled out onto the highway, the truck didn't move. For a brief, blissful moment, I thought we'd lost him. But then, in the distance, I saw the headlights again. The truck had pulled onto the highway and was following us, keeping a steady distance this time. My chest tightened as I realized we were back where we started. "Why is he following us?" Sophia asked, her voice rising in pitch. "I don't know," I admitted, trying to keep calm. For miles, the truck maintained its distance, like a predator stalking its prey. I tried to focus on the road, but my mind was racing with worst-case scenarios. Was he trying to scare us? Rob us? Something worse? Then, just as suddenly as before, the truck veered into the opposite lane and sped ahead, disappearing around a bend. I didn't trust it. Sure enough, as we rounded the same bend, we saw the truck again. This time stopped dead in the middle of the road. My heart sank. "What the hell is he doing?" Sophia whispered. The truck was blocking most of the narrow road, leaving barely enough room to pass. On one side was the sheer face of a cliff, on the other, a steep drop-off into darkness. Passing wasn't just risky. It was dangerous. I brought the car to a halt a safe distance away, my mind racing. The driver's door opened and a man stepped out. He was tall and broad-shouldered, dressed in a dark jacket and a baseball cap pulled low over his face. Instead of checking his truck or signaling for help, he leaned against the side of the vehicle and stared directly at us. I froze. "What does he want?" Sophia asked, her voice trembling. "I don't know," I said, gripping the wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. The man didn't move. He just stood there, arms crossed, as if waiting for us to make the first move. Sophia started to cry. "What do we do?" "I don't know," I admitted. I honked the horn, hoping to scare him off or signal that we needed him to move, but he didn't flinch. Minutes passed like hours. The man didn't approach, but he didn't leave either. I felt trapped, paralyzed by fear and indecision. Sophia kept urging me to drive around him, but I couldn't bring myself to risk it. Finally, the distant glow of headlights appeared behind us. A second car was approaching. The man must have seen it too, because he suddenly turned and jogged back to his truck. Within seconds, he was back in the driver's seat, speeding off into the darkness. We waited until the other car passed us, then cautiously continued our journey. But the nightmare wasn't over. About 10 minutes later, we spotted the truck again. It was parked off to the side of the road, its headlights off. As we passed it out and started following us. This time, I didn't hesitate. I floored it, pushing my old sedan to its limits. My heart was pounding, and my hands were shaking, but I refused to let him catch up. By the time we reached the outskirts of my hometown, we finally had cell service. I called my brother and told him what was happening. "Just get here," he said. "We'll be waiting." When we pulled into the long dirt driveway leading to my house, I saw my brother and two of his friends waiting on the porch. All three of them were armed, their silhouettes illuminated by the porch light. The truck followed us all the way to the house but stopped at the edge of the driveway. For a moment, it just idled there, its engine rumbling in the night. Then, slowly, it turned around and sped off the way it had come.